Okay, we're going in 3, 2, 1. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to a Pakistani conversation. Today we have Usman Amjad with us. I'll introduce him in a second, but a Pakistani conversation is about bringing um, the daily Pakistani on our show and having conversations which can add a lot of value into the lives of all our listeners. मेरे साथ मेरी co-host Hafsa हैं, who will be guiding this conversation along with myself. I'll introduce Usman and how we actually got in touch with him. So over the past few months, we've seen a lot of educational institutes kind of come under a lot of fire because of how they've been treating their students. And this is not just the sexual harassment or harassment allegations, but it's generally the system and the culture which exists within school. Inside institutions played a huge part in this entire uprising. It has almost, I think, 14,000 members right now. So that's a really significant part of the movement. So Usman, I'd just like to get into this conversation. Where did this start? Where did this idea come from? I know you're only one of the 5 or 6 admins which are doing this, but what kind of pushed you to start this group? And did you expect anything like this to happen as a result of it?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much, and Hafsa, both of you, for having me on board. But to start off, basically, the way it started for me was, so you guys would probably know FET ke LAMS ka jo discussion forum hai, uske upar a lot of people were being called out for different reasons. And a lot of people were being called out. And during that time, although I'm not a student at LAMS, although I have not read the posts per se, obviously at LDF because they're confidential, but I had heard of them that, ye ho raha hai. And that led me to think, this, a lot of the times we expect that things like these would be coming from people who are from a lower class, who are uneducated, who are illiterate, who don't have any kind of knowledge of what's right and wrong, who can't distinguish between right and wrong, right? So in that time, I thought, that's not true. It's not a problem of illiteracy. It's not a problem of, not having enough education or not having the good enough education. It was just a problem of a mindset that even the elite of the elite in our society have. So that led me to reflect on, my own time in school. So I've been an HSonian. I was an HSN since class 2, and I was still there till the very end, till A-levels. And during my time at HSN, I personally felt that nothing against HSN per se, but just about the culture that exists in our social circles, most of our social circles, in the sense that on a daily basis, we tend to have conversations with people which are by default very insulting, which are by default very insensitive. And in these day-to-day conversations, we don't realize what we're saying. We don't realize the power of our words. We don't realize, अगर मैं किसी को काला बुला दूंगा कि उसका क्या consequence है, उसका क्या impact है, because at the end of the day, that's an entire race that we were referring to as an insult. It shouldn't be like that, right? So I was just thinking a lot about that, and I mean, I'm no saint. I wouldn't say I'm a saint in this context. Like, मैंने कभी किसी को कुछ बुरा नहीं कहा होगा. I'm sure मैंने subconsciously या consciously कभी ना कभी किसी को अपने time में कभी ना कभी किसी को बोला होगा. So first thing I wanted to do was to apologize to everyone, because I feel like this reflection was very, very necessary for me, because there was this void that needed to be filled, because there was always a guilty conscience that felt, no, Usman, तुमने गलत किया. And once that realization came into play, I apologized to everyone. I thought that an apology was necessary too. And then I realized that, okay, I've done my part, but what here can I do, or maybe some of my friends can do to, change the status quo. And that is when I first reached out to Kenza, and I spoke with her. She's one of the co-admins with me on the phone. And so once I spoke with her, she's also an old friend of mine. So I spoke with her about the entire idea, what was bothering me. And one thing led to the other. We decided that, we're going to come up with a forum where people have a safe space to talk about how their institutions have wronged them, or how certain kinds of bullying and certain kinds of harassment were enabled at institutions. And this happened to coincide with the time when LGS 101 की काफी ज़्यादा चीज़ें बहुत peak पर थी. Professors were being called out for sexual harassment, rightly so. एंड या सो दिस कोइंसाइडेड, उनकी भी काफ़ी ज़्यादा बात चल रही थी, साथ साथ बहुत से लोग अपने इंस्टीट्यूशंस के बारे में बात करने लग गए, एंड everyone had grievances, everyone had personal, very very personal accounts of what had happened. So
Yeah.
our idea was कि हम लोगों ने एक safe space create करनी है for students who go to these schools to be able to talk about such issues, so that the problem that is very very pertinent that we see almost every day, that institutional level पर कोई accountability नहीं exist करती. हम लोग students कोई अगर स्कूल के अंदर चीज़ mess up कर देते हैं, screw up कर देते हैं, there's always a certain level of accountability. आपके parents आ जाते हैं, teachers involved हो जाते हैं, headmaster, headmistress, principal, कोई ना कोई involved हो जाएगा. But what if स्कूल के अंदर headmistress, headmaster, coordinator, whoever, उनसे कोई गलती हो जाए? Who are they, like, are they accountable to anyone? And if they are, what are the actions? What are the consequences? What is happening? It's not a transparent process. And students have a certain level of, they have a certain right in this context कि उनको पता होना चाहिए कि उनके स्कूल में क्या हो रहा है, और अगर उनके साथ कोई ज़्यादती करेगा और अगर वो ज़्यादती एडमिन की तरफ से आ रही है तो उसके साथ कैसे डील किया जाएगा. So we just want this process to be a little more transparent and certain policies to be in place which, not just empower the students, but just make an educational institution a safe space for these students. Because that is the idea of an educational institution. It's not just आप सिर्फ तालीम नहीं देते, आप साथ साथ तरबियत भी दे रहे होते. एंड अगर आप तरबियत के रास्ते में लोगों को ऐसी चीज़ें सिखाओगे जो कि उनको, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर आप बुलिंग इनेबल कर रहे हो या अगर आपके पास कोई कंप्लेन आ रही है बुलिंग और आपके उसके अगेंस्ट एक्शन नहीं ले रहे, तो दैट इज़ यू एसेंशियली नॉर्मलाइजिंग इट, एंड दैट इज़ अ प्रॉब्लम. बिकॉज काफ़ी दफ़ा ऐसा होता है कि students इतनी बुरी तरह स्कार हो जाते हैं after incidents like these that it follows them through and through until the very end, and उनकी बहुत ज़्यादा insecurities develop हो जाती हैं इन चीज़ों की वजह से, which is nothing, like it's not their fault, it's nothing they've done. आपकी social class पे, आपकी social background पे, आपकी body के ऊपर, there's so many comments that are made on a day-to-day basis which are so normalized. Yeah. And no one says anything. And I'm not saying that the institution or the administration of a particular institution is entirely to blame. Obviously, it's the students as well. But what my personal opinion on this is that, yes, students are to blame, but at the end of the day, these are kids who are in the ages of 13 to 17. They are relatively much more naive. They are relatively, and even if they're not, it's just that, they are growing, they are learning. But it's the adults' responsibility. Where are the adults who are supposed to correct us when we go wrong? And yes, obviously, it's very natural for a student to go wrong. But that is where parents come in. That is where teachers come in. That is where your coordinator comes in. That is where वो आपकी तरबियत करते हैं. And इसी चीज़ से आपकी तरबियत करते हैं. But if they don't step in, if they don't do anything, then it's just all normalized. And आप जब स्कूल से निकलोगे, आप कॉलेज में भी यही करोगे. कॉलेज से निकलोगे, आपको कोई नहीं रोकेगा. So I personally, and along with the other admins, obviously, we feel that, if you want to correct a system, if you want to correct a culture, you have to start from the very root. And the very root in this context is people who are in the very, very, who are literal children. आप उनको वहाँ से सिखाओ what's right, what's wrong, differences between, educating them on sexual harassment, the fact that it exists, the fact that there should be a safe space to talk about it and whatnot. And addressing your other question for us to whether or not we anticipated what happened. So I'll be honest, when Kinza and I talked about this, we spoke about the forum, it was mostly, we want to create a safe space. I had a rough idea of how we wanted to proceed. हम लोग schools के पास एक proposal लेके जाएं. We didn't just want it to be a safe space, लेकिन हम लोग schools के साथ भी communications करना चाह रहे थे. So essentially that is what we had in mind, but we didn't have an idea of how big our audience would be. It started growing exponentially, and we didn't anticipate that, I'll be honest. एकदम से बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ गई थी, and there were times when it was difficult for us as well, because हम लोग की भी कोई ना कोई मसरूफियात होती हैं, कुछ ना कुछ चल रहा होता था. But we had to make sure that, if there's something that we've committed to, we have to take it through and through. Now I'm out of Pakistan, I'm not in Pakistan anymore, but still I want to, work towards this still with as much energy as I was 2 months ago maybe, because this is something that's an issue very pertinent. And अगर आज को हम नहीं करेंगे, कल को let's just say हमारे बच्चे, हमारे nephews, nieces, कोई भी जाएगा, they're the ones who are going to be facing these problems, and then we'll be the ones getting angry कि oh, administration ऐसा कैसे कर सकती है. अगर वो कर सकती है तो हम उनको रोक सकते हैं. Now is the best time to stop them, because बाद में complain करने से बेहतर है कि हम अब step in करें, अब कुछ करने की कोशिश करें. So it is also our responsibility as respectable alumni of our respective institutions के हम उनको constructive criticism दें. So yes,
Thank you
that's
so much,
yeah.
Usman, for this honestly, for taking this first step that you took, and to be looking forward to to look forward to a better and a brighter future for our upcoming generations. Honestly, this is something that I think both Aram and I share the sentiment to be really grateful for everyone who has helped bring the victims of this issue, this case, whether it was in LUMS or LGS across Pakistan. Just the fact that you guys helped to raise voices was something that I think we both of us really do appreciate. So you kept mentioning this word safe space. You wanted the group inside institutions to be a safe space for everyone. And we did see across, like when me and Arham were going through the group, we saw everyone did post really detailed reviews on the experiences that they had in their respective institutions. So, did you see a pattern in your group or across social media? Because social media पर तो एक general एक overview बहुत ये भी आ रहा था कि because we also saw a lot of enablers coming and victim shaming बहुत हो रही थी कि यार लड़कियों ने ही कुछ किया होगा, लड़कियों ने पहले क्यों नहीं बोला, लड़कियों ने कपड़े इस तरह के पहने हुए होंगे, बहुत मॉडर्न स्कूल है, बहुत लिबरल स्कूल है, they're not teaching values. और एक और ये आया था कि भाई अभी उसके बाद एक ये भी गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से वो आया था कि फिर प्राइवेट गर्ल्स स्कूल में फिर मेल टीचर्स को हायर नहीं किया जाना चाहिए, बिकॉज दीज वर थिंग्स जिसकी कोई यू आर नॉट एड्रेसिंग, लाइक यू सेड, द रूट कंसर्न ऑफ इट. ऊपर ऊपर से आप चीज़ों को सॉल्व करने की कोशिश करें विदाउट एड्रेसिंग व्हाई दीज थिंग्स आर हैपनिंग, राइट. हमारे कल्चर में कितनी टॉक्सिसिटी है इन सारी चीज़ों से रिलेटेड. सो हैव यू नोटिस्ड अ सर्टेन pattern that went about in your group, how your group members responded to it? Because managing a group as big as inside institutions which had 13,000 people in it, I would like to believe that every single one of the members did respect all the stories that come out. But were there people that you did come across that might possibly have invalidated experiences? And what did you notice? What were their common arguments, and how did you guys possibly deal with all those issues?
Sure. So first off, yes, this was an issue that was a very pertinent one within the forum. This is something that we saw multiple times. There were people coming in invalidating certain accounts. They were saying कि आपकी गलती है, आपने उनको अलाउ किया, आपने उनको ऐड किया, आपने उनको खुद पहले कुछ किया होगा, आपने कोई पिक्चर्स भेजी होंगी, आपके कपड़े ऐसे थे, this that. They always had something to say to somehow blame the victims. And this is something that also we anticipated, because as groups grow, since we do have a criteria for people entering the group, but not based on where you come from or anything of the sort. So for that reason, we obviously anticipated कि हम इस तरह की चीजें administer नहीं कर सकते when letting people in the forum or in the group. So for that reason, we anticipated कि ये होगा, बहुत से लोग आएंगे और इस तरह का कुछ ना कुछ बोलेंगे. And इसी वजह से हम लोगों ने from the very first day, जो हम लोग की group की description थी, जो about section होता है group का, उसमें हमने certain rules and regulations in place थी हम लोग की, जिसमें it explicitly says कि anyone found to be, say, like off the top of my head, मुझे थोड़ा सा टाइम हो गया वो लिखे हुए, but मुझे याद पड़ता है, one of them was कि anyone found to be invalidating the experience of any of the victims will be immediately removed and blocked from the forum. And again, re-emphasizing on the idea that it's a safe space, and if you are found to be violating that safe space for anyone, then you will not be a part of this forum. And for that reason, there have been multiple people who have been removed from the forum. अगर कोई इस तरह आपको victim blame कर रहा है या फिर आपको कह रहा है कि ये आपकी गलती थी या आपने कुछ किया है, हम पूरी कोशिश करके हम लोग कोशिश करते हैं कि at all times administer करते रहें. अगर कोई इस तरह का इंसिडेंट होता है तो हम लोग उसको मॉडरेट करते रहें जिस हद तक मॉडरेट हो सकता है. लेकिन अगर मॉडरेट नहीं हो सकता and it's straight up offensive and extremely rude and insensitive towards the victim, then we remove the said person, and yeah, we don't accept the request afterwards. And that is how we're doing it, how we're going about it. Obviously, we're very, very open to constructive criticism, because at the end of the day, Kinza, me, and all the other admins were just, college-going students. And we're always open to constructive criticism. If there's any way you guys think, we can change that, we can improve that, and we're always all ears for that. But this is the strategy that we've adopted so far. कि अगर कोई इस तरह करता है तो हम उनको remove कर देते हैं, simply because हम लोग की description में भी है और हमने pin भी किया है forum में कि ये rules हैं, ये regulations हैं, आपकी comment करने की and just being a part of the forum, and on the other hand आपके post करने के लिए भी कुछ regulations हैं. And if you scroll up in the forum, like if you scroll up, बिल्कुल वो भी pinned एक होगी कि हमने एक वीडियो अपलोड की थी जिसमें हमने बताया हुआ था कि there are certain regulations that you need to follow when posting something on that forum. So just both to protect the victims and also the person who is not protect the person being called out, but not being counter bullied in the process of being called out.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I think this point जो तुमने अभी बताया है कि constructive criticism, of course, you should appreciate, and I think the thing about constructive criticism is it comes with the mindset of wanting to actually understand the problem rather than just attacking something. And I think, and especially in our culture, we also have to realize कि लोगों को ये education कोई बचपन से तो मिलती नहीं है, and we should be willing to accept those that are coming with that approach, but then ये approach भी बहुत ही rarely मिलती है हमें लोगों में.
बिल्कुल. Very true.
But to even get to the root of the problem, I wouldn't say it would be to just to educate people about it, but also to ये जो हमारा एक personality trait बन गया attack करने वाला लोगों को rather than asking to understand, I think इसको भी equally हमें सही करना पड़ेगा. I think that was a very a good point brought up by you. The second thing I would want to talk more about is कि इस पूरे situation में you kind of saw a truer picture of what private schools are like. They're really able to kind of defend their outlook through marketing, through particular students, क्योंकि वो एक ही side अपनी दिखाते होंगे. But I think this showed in depth what private schools mean, but like all schools and universities are like. तो ये एक तरह से जब hypocrisy उनकी बाहर निकली, and we as students know how much of hypocrisy there is within our own schools.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel we need to kind of move ahead knowing this? Because I mean I don't feel कि ये हम इसके भी solution की तरफ जा रहे हैं. I think the schools still aren't being held as accountable as strongly as they should be at the moment. So how exactly do we move forward in kind of beating this hypocrisy which we see from schools, and why do you think it's there in the first place?
So as for why it is there in the first place, it's simply because when we're in school, there's always this very visible power dynamic that exists between the faculty and the students. The faculty are in control of a lot more than the students, and in a nutshell, they are in control of your future. जब आप A levels में हो तो you want to go to college, you want the best recommendations, you want the best predicted grades, and आपको बहुत अच्छी applications भेजनी है universities, all of that. And that is where faculty plays a huge role. Simply because they have that power over you, it can possibly exploit it. I'm not saying everyone does, but I'm just saying they're in a position where they can potentially exploit that power that they have over us. So I think there's always this very visible power dynamic that exists in elite institutions. और आप उस struggle में होते हो कि अच्छा मुझे बस यहाँ जाना है तो उसके लिए मैं ये करूँगा, मैं ये कर लूँगी, मैंने बेस्ट ऐसे लिखना है, मुझे बेस्ट क्रिटिक चाहिए अपने स्कूल के बेस्ट सर से, what not, ठीक है. And as for how we can change the status quo is simply कि as a generation, I think we are a lot more aware of the issues that people before us were, and I'm hopeful that people after us will be a lot even more aware than we are. Okay, it's something that's changing very actively, in my personal opinion, in Pakistan, and I'm very hopeful कि हम लोगों से जो छोटे लोग होंगे schools में, they will be very aware of the problems that exist. They will be very aware of their own rights, and they will be very aware of what's right and wrong within a school. Okay, if a teacher wrongs you, if you are a girl studying in a school and your male professor touches you inappropriately, anything of that sort, you should be educated enough by your family, by your school, by social norms कि ये चीज़ गलत है. एंड अगर ये चीज़ गलत है तो उसका एक प्रोसेस इन प्लेस होना चाहिए, कंप्लेंट फॉर्म होना चाहिए या फिर कोई कंप्लेंट बॉक्स होना चाहिए जहाँ पे आप ये कंप्लेंट फाइल कर सको, ठीक है, अगर आपके साथ कुछ हो रहा है. And this is something that should exist in schools, and that is exactly what we're trying to get in touch with schools for. We're saying that ये चीजें हैं, and these are the problems that your students from your school have identified, and since you haven't done this in the past X many years, here's us as respectable alumni of your institution trying to tell you, okay, this is how you can maybe correct yourself or better yourself. This is, these are a set of proposals that we have. And we would really appreciate it if either we could work together on these proposals, the alumni committee and the school administration, or you can just, adopt these proposals within your, I don't know, some agenda that you have for these, for that institution that you run. So I think for sure, एक set of rules होने चाहिए, एक पूरा regulations होने चाहिए, teacher student communication पर बहुत strict guidelines होनी चाहिए. उसके अलावा I personally feel कि बच्चों को educate करना चाहिए on things that are inappropriate, are appropriate, and professors को / sirs या teachers को communicate करना चाहिए कि what is appropriate when you are interacting with students. उसके अलावा when you're in school, you are obviously in need of, you could be possibly in need of some help, some emotionally someone to listen to you. And not everyone has very, will have friends who can always listen to them. Sometimes you really need a professional to listen to you and guide you, because aapke friends bhi at the end of the day, they're 16, 17-year-olds. No one's a therapist over there, right? So for that reason, I think schools should always have, like, I don't know, a therapist that is available on campus during school hours, jab bhi zarurat ho, and maybe after school hours as well. Just, proposals like these should be adopted by schools. And although it's not very visible to the naked eye कि क्या चीजें बदल रही हैं, but a trend that I think is changing is that जो नए schools आ रहे हैं या जो existing schools थे, जो नए schools आ रहे हैं वो अपनी policies में कुछ चीजें बहुत ज़्यादा वाज़े कर रहे हैं, in the sense that professors को बहुत strict guidelines दी जाएंगी especially after this entire movement कि we don't want to be under the radar, so make sure that you don't do something that brings us under the radar. So for that reason, teachers will be a lot more cautious, school administrations will be a lot more cautious, even though they haven't been directly involved, they haven't been directly called out, but they'll know that if they do something, they are in a very tricky situation in the sense that they can very easily be called out. So for that reason, schools and school administrations are a lot more particular about what happens within the walls of the institution. So I'm hopeful that, maybe the change that we're hoping to see is not very visible immediately. But when we go back to schools, obviously एक बहुत बड़ा gap भी आ गया है because of COVID. Like what people last went to school in a long time ago, ये पूरा शायद अब कुछ लोगों के लिए online हो, कुछ लोगों के लिए ना हो. But since इतना ज़्यादा gap आ गया है, by the time people go back to school, it will hopefully look very different from what it was like when they last went. Because teachers know they can be called out, administrators know they can be called out, directors know they can be called out, board of directors know they can be called out. It's just कि अब एक I hope this stays the way it is right now. कि अगर कल को इस तरह का कोई मसला होता है, people still feel that inside institutions is enough of a safe place to call said institution out and address their grievances. And maybe if it's a problem that is big enough, not obviously I'm no judge for whether or not a problem is big enough, but if people deem like it's something that needs attention, it will naturally get attention. It will naturally spark something on social media and start going viral. More and more people will listen to it, and again पूरा issue surface कर जाएगा. It's just that अब एक platform आ गया जहाँ पर लोग centralized होके एक issue के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं. And I think personally what I've observed as one more advantage of this entire movement per se is कि parents के end पर I think बहुत ज़्यादा awareness भी है, in the sense in terms of how they want to be with their children and how they want to create a safe space at home, rather than hoping कि हाँ school में तो जो हो रहा है वो हो रहा है, घर में आके तो बच्चा ही करेगा. That's not the case. That's still the same child. You need to be a certain way. I think certain parents are realizing that you need to allow your child to talk to you about whatever it is that they want to talk about, because sometimes parents invalidate कर देते हैं क्योंकि उनको पता ही नहीं होता क्या हो रहा है. So now parents know that these problems exist. Most parents will only know कि अच्छा हमारा बच्चा सुबह 8 बजे स्कूल जाता है, दोपहर 2 बजे वापस आता है. उस 8 के 2 के दरमियान में हर रोज 5 दिन एक हफ्ते में क्या हो रहा होता है वो नहीं उनको पता होता, बिसाइड्स मैथ का होमवर्क, साइंस का होमवर्क, इंग्लिश का होमवर्क, और बहुत कुछ हो रहा होता है स्कूल में. एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दिस आई थिंक पेरेंट्स आर अ लॉट मोर इन्फॉर्म्ड ऑफ how much more of an active role they want to play. And at the same time, I think पेरेंट्स की तरफ से एक अवेयरनेस भी है कि अगर कल को उन लोगों ने अपने बच्चे को किसी स्कूल में इनरोल कराना है, दे नो कि हर स्कूल में अच्छी साइड आपको हमेशा पता होगी स्कूल की क्या है, बेस्ट फैकल्टी है, आपकी स्पोर्ट्स फैसिलिटीज़ हैं, आपकी बेस्ट को करिकुलर्स हैं, बहुत सी फैसिलिटीज़ बहुत से स्कूल्स एडवर्टाइज करेंगे, मार्केट करेंगे, बट दीज आर थिंग्स दैट गो अनसेड अनहर्ड. ठीक है, एंड दिस इज वेयर पेरेंट्स कम इन, दे नो कि अच्छा इस स्कूल में ये होया है, इस स्कूल में ये होया है, कल को अगर वो डलवाना चाहते हैं वो एड्रेस कर सकते हैं ये इशू. यू नो अगर कह लो बच्चे का इंटरव्यू हो रहा है एंड दे वांट, अ पेरेंट हैज अ क्वेश्चन टू द एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर दैट यू नो okay, well and good, we've had a great interview, but you know this happened x years ago, how has your policy changed in response to that, and how are you dealing with that?
Yeah.
So it's
Uh,
something that obviously parents can ask as well. Sorry.
Yeah, the last point that you raised was pretty relevant. I feel like around the fact that parents and parental awareness is very important because बच्चों को आपको जो 6-7 घंटे आप जो छोड़ देते हैं schools में, that's not enough. आप सिर्फ उनकी homework diaries check करना is no longer the only criteria to ensure that your child is, going to actually turn out to be a good human being and a good civilian. Right, but however, before this interview, Arham and I, we were just sitting through and googling a couple of interviews and a couple of things related to this topic, and we came across this survey done by this news channel. Jisme the women is going across interviewing women in Liberty Market, right, Lahore mein. So the one thing that I noticed, मैंने जो 16-17 मिनट की वीडियो थी उसमें एक चीज़ जो मैंने देखी थी उसमें again I feel like it's an unconscious response to all these issues, but every single one of the women, almost every single one of the women that was being interviewed about their opinion on what happened at LGS, they were enabling and they were trying to justify the fact that either boys will be boys या फिर मर्द हैं तो मेल प्रोफेसर्स तो इसी तरह करेंगे या फिर आपको प्राइवेट गर्ल्स स्कूल में मेल प्रोफेसर्स को रखना नहीं चाहिए या फिर लड़कियों को थोड़ा सा सही कवर करना चाहिए या फिर हमारे कल्चर का ये हिस्सा है. And we were constantly blaming this on the fact कि culture, of course, it's a culture का हिस्सा, but हम लोग culture कह कर हम लोग इसको बहुत defend कर रहे होते हैं कि यार एक culture का हिस्सा. It's not like culture पत्थर पर लकीर है कि change नहीं हो सकती. Culture is a part of an ever changing process, right? So I feel like हम लोग बहुत ज़्यादा credit दे रहे हैं to the fact कि parental इस अवेयरनेस ने पेरेंट्स को ज़्यादा अवेयरनेस दी होगी अराउंड द फैक्ट कि भाई हमारी लड़कियों को तो आपस की ज़रूरत है. आई फील लाइक इट्स ऑल्सो गोइंग द अदर वे अराउंड विच आई थिंक आई वुड एज अ गर्ल आई फील लाइक मैंने अपने अराउंड जो नोटिस वो बहुत किया अराउंड इवन द वुमेन अराउंड मी, द फ्रेंड्स दैट आई हैव, उनका एक ही रिस्पॉन्स है कि भाई या फिर लड़कियों को थोड़ा करना चाहिए बिकॉज LGS इज अपेरेंटली अ लिबरल स्कूल जहाँ इट डज नॉट एडवोकेट इस्लामिक वैल्यूज एंड स्टफ. So इसमें लड़कियों की गलती होगी या फिर मर्द तो इसी तरह होता है. So I feel like the one thing that I took away from that video was the fact कि हमारे यहाँ औरतें भी औरत के पीछे ही पड़ी हुई है. एक तो चीज़ यही है कि they are constantly defending the men in our society कि ये तो करेंगे ऐसा. एंड उसके बाद एंड में आई फील लाइक दिस इज व्हाट इट्स आल्सो गोइंग टू हैपन इज द फैक्ट कि बहुत स्मॉल माइनॉरिटी होगी पेरेंट्स की दैट आर एक्चुअली गोइंग टू टेक द राइट स्टेप, बट बाकी ये होंगे कि दे आर गोइंग टू फोर्स देयर गर्ल्स टू कवर अप मोर, दे आर गोइंग टू फोर्स देयर गर्ल्स टू नॉट इंटरैक्ट, नॉट स्टडी इन अ कोएड. It's just an ever going toxic circle I feel like we are stuck in. But yeah, I feel like I hope a better outcome comes from this, but I do not have much hopes in what this went about. But yeah, that's just my two piece around that.
Yeah, and I mean, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
नहीं, I also हाँ जहाँ तक कि इसकी बात है, I mean ठीक है स्कूल शायद ज़्यादा अब cautious हो जाएं, but I think there will still exist this issue के it won't really come out of a genuine place of actually looking after the students. I mean, I don't feel like my school really cared about the students or like me as a student. I mean, it's kind of face saving at this point for all of these schools. And जहाँ तक ये मतलब complacency की भी नहीं, hypocrisy की बात है. I mean, I remember A levels में there was this huge issue जो create हुआ था जिसकी वजह से एक मेरा दोस्त है इनफैक्ट मेरे बैचमेट को उन्होंने सस्पेंड कर दिया 3-4 दिन के लिए and it was over a meme page he made in which he was making fun of the school. So I mean they were really quick to take action on that. They even claimed कि ये हमने किसी इंटेलिजेंस सर्विस से इसका एडमिन हमने ढूंढ लिया है एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट you know they've been really quick to jump on such issues लेकिन I know because one of the persons publicly named by the government even जिनको अब निकाल दिया है LGS से that teacher has taught in front of me. He's taught in the girls branch. He's taught in the branch I was at. So, I mean, I've been hearing stories about him for the past 4 years, and it's not something that they didn't take up with the admin. They did take it up with the admin. And 1A1 वाला तो response आपने सुना भी होगा. A recorded piece went live as well. So, I mean, I get it. They might be cautious, but it's not really getting to the core of solving that negligence towards students or matlab it might be a short term solution because schools डरे हुए हैं इस वक्त but in the long term I think we need to get to actually creating a culture in schools where the administration actually cares about you.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. I think ये बात बिल्कुल सच है कि at the end of the day, जो institutions में हम लोग wait, is it only me just अरहम की video I think stuck हुई? It's not. Yeah. Sorry. So I was just saying that at the end of the day, the institutions that we go to, they're not so much educational institutions as much as they are a business mafia. Okay? The private institutions, the elite institutions that all of us know of, these are owned by certain families in Pakistan, and they're the richest of the richest in the country. And they're going to profit off of this for the rest of their life. Okay? So for them, at the end of the day, it is just a business like any other business in Pakistan. It just happens to be a business where people are supposed to be groomed, जहाँ पे उनकी तरबियत होनी होती है, जहाँ पे उनको बहुत सी चीजें सिखानी होती हैं, where they are made who they are. So उनका business it has a huge impact on the people who are direct stakeholders in their business. But I don't think they see it the same way. For them, the only direct stakeholder is themselves. And they just want to profit off of that. So yes, we cannot change that in the short run, at least. In the short run, it's very hard for us to change the acknowledgement of the fact that they're not the only stakeholders. But what we can do is capitalize on the fact that we know it's a business at the end of the day. And what hurts a business is what will help us.
Yeah.
So I think हम लोग उसी चीज पे capitalize करके अपने आप को strategize करते हैं कि अगर हमें पता है कि business की marketing को हम थोड़ा सा hurt कर सकते हैं with something that could potentially help us a lot, then we will do that. If an institution is being called out, it obviously means that's bad PR for the institution. But at the same time, if they take an action that directly addresses the concerns that students and alumni have raised, that also puts them in good light and kind of helps us as well and kind of helps our cause as well. So it's a two-way street. ठीक है? उनको call out करेंगे, उनकी PR बुरी होगी. But at the same time, उनको call out करने के बाद अगर उनका response बहुत अच्छा होगा और वो actually आपकी बात सुनेंगे, तो फिर chances are कि उनकी PR और बेहतर हो जाए in the sense that yes, they've acknowledged the fact that there were problems in their school, but at the same time, they are willing to listen to students who are calling them out and fix and address those problems. Because obviously, हम perfection की तरफ जा ही सकते हैं. Perfect होना तो obviously it's just a theoretical concept. So in theory, even what we're trying to achieve is getting to perfect as much as we can, and in the process, we do what we have to, right? So I just think that yes, in the long run, maybe it's a possibility, and that is a responsibility that all of us have on our shoulders. But at the same time, हम short run में बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं. There is so much that we can do in the short run, and yes, it may be performative at the end. I don't know if it is or it isn't. I can only assume so. But even if it is, it helps what we're doing. It helps create, like in the creation of that safe space. So even if it's for a short period of time, at least it's a drop in the ocean. And maybe in the future, we can do something even more than a drop in the ocean, right? So it's a process. It's a very long process for sure. we don't think कि हम लोग we will change the face of the education industry in Pakistan. We never thought that we can do that, nor do we think we've done that yet. But hopefully, one step at a time, we want to get to that. We all want to get to that. We want to create that safe space again. Once again, I'm reiterating that word again and again. But we want to create that safe space for the students, for the teachers, for the administrators as well.
So the one thing that I really wanted to personally have a conversation about was the one thing जो social media पे हम constantly देख रहे हैं, the calling out culture वाली चीज़, which I feel like is very like of course the calling out culture that happened was the reason why ये सारी चीज़ें highlight हुई हैं and the issues that came across, right? And the group, the inside institutions, का purpose ही यही serve कर रहा है कि it has to, institutions and people and faculty and administration has to be called out about this, right? However, there's this one part where I feel like what has failed across this entire issue is the fact that we haven't been seeing a lot of education around these things, because एक बहुत redundancy हमारी government की तरफ से भी दिखाई गई है कि अभी तो inquiry committees बनी है LGS में, अभी LGS का मैं देख रही थी before this entire, उसमें उनकी जो website पे जो policy थी, behavior policy बहुत weak सी थी, but अभी recently after all this issue उन्होंने July 2020 में they passed their entire sexual harassment policy. उनकी website पर है, काफ़ी detailed है, 16 pages long, but I feel like after it took so long for them to actually do that, after the entire administration was called out for the failure of actually holding their faculty accountable, right? So I feel like across this issue सिर्फ ये बहुत डर का factor जो हुआ है, this fear of हमारी, again like you said, PR का, which is good, the fear factor is good and it's serving the purpose in the short run, but I feel like long run में जो एक बहुत negative नहीं कहूँगी, but एक जो again root cause जो address नहीं हम कर पा रहे हैं was the fact कि हम अपने मर्दों को बहुत लीवरेज दे रहे होते हैं कि मर्द तो करेंगे लड़कियों को देखकर, औरतों को देखकर, इट्स लाइक दे कैन नॉट कंट्रोल देयर अर्जेस इन देमसेल्व्स, हमारे पावर डायनामिक्स एक्सप्लॉइट हो रहे थे बिकॉज ऑफ द फैक्ट कि स्कूल इज़ अ वर्क प्लेस एंड यू आर एसेंशियली एक एम्प्लॉई का रिलेशनशिप इस्टेब्लिश हो रहा था, सो power dynamics with your student and your faculty members would really out of bounds here. So education wali aspect, I feel like no one is still addressing that कि भाई schools में at the grassroots level आप इसको किस तरह address कर सकते हैं, because for a culture that does not even like to have any concept of sex education in it, even in our most liberal schools and even in the most expensive schools, I feel like हम लोग बहुत root cause को वो कर रहे हैं. So, what have you noticed since, as an admin, I feel like you've been really into the entire issue and you've been closely monitoring it. Has the conversation जिसमें calling out के साथ, has there been more updates to the fact that people are actually, schools and administrations and the government, have they actually taken substantial steps to actually remove this culture that propagates and that enables harassment across, the realms?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So as for the call out culture, I agree it has its pros and cons. Okay? It really varies from each case, whether or not calling someone out can be healthy in that particular context as well, because on the forum as well there were a lot of people who were calling out their batchmates, their juniors and their seniors for something that happened a long time ago. I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time we just didn't want कि जो group का purpose है वो dilute हो, and ये काफ़ी दफ़ा हुआ. उसके बाद we came up with